The arrival of the unexpected. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly around the Craxian hegemony's 47th Conquest Fleet, their massive warships hanging in perfect formation like predatory beasts waiting for prey. Admiral Vextor stood on the command bridge of the flagship Dominator, his 6 eyes scanning the tactical displays with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. For 3,000 cycles, the Craxian Empire had expanded without challenge, crushing civilizations beneath their technological superiority and sheer numbers. Today was supposed to be another simple conquest. The primitive species on the third planet of System 271X had barely achieved fusion power. They called themselves humans, and the Craxian scouts reported them as a minor threat at best. The conquest protocol was clear. Arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and integrate the new species into the hegemony as servants. It had worked on hundreds of worlds before, but something was wrong. Admiral. Communications Officer Zekvil's voice carried an unusual tremor. We're detecting an approaching vessel. Single signature. It's coming from the direction of the human homeworld. Vextor's mandibles clicked in amusement. One ship. They send one ship against our entire fleet. The bridge crew shared in their commander's mirth. The 47th Conquest Fleet consisted of over 200 vessels, each one capable of reducing continents to glass. Put it on the main viewer, Vextor ordered, settling back into his command throne. Let us see what passes for human engineering. The holographic display flickered to life, and silence fell across the bridge like a heavy shroud. The approaching ship was wrong. It wasn't the crude, bulky design the scouts had reported. It wasn't even particularly large. The vessel was sleek, almost organic in its curves, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible weapons ports, no engine signatures they could recognize. It moved through space with an eerie grace, as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions it chose to acknowledge. Scan it, Vextor commanded, his voice losing its amused tone. Full spectrum analysis. The science stations erupted in activity, but the readings made no sense. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Materials that defied classification. Spatial distortions that bent their sensors' ability to comprehend what they were seeing. Sir, the lead science officer's voice was barely above a whisper. The readings are impossible. The ship appears to be generating a field that our instruments can't properly analyze. Power output it's off our scales, but contained in ways we don't understand. The human ship continued its approach, making no aggressive moves, sending no communications. It simply advanced toward the center of the Craxian formation with the calm assurance of a creature that knew it belonged exactly where it was. Vextor felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Uncertainty. No species had ever approached a Craxian conquest fleet with such brazen confidence. Especially not with a single ship. Commander Thexar, he turned to his tactical officer, dispatch a squadron of interceptors. Standard greeting protocol. If they refuse to respond, disable their engines and prepare for boarding. 12 Craxian interceptors, the fastest and most maneuverable ships in the fleet, peeled away from formation and accelerated toward the lone human vessel. Their pilots were elite, veterans of dozens of campaigns, equipped with the finest technology the hegemony could produce. The human ship made no move to evade or defend itself. It simply continued its steady approach. Interceptor Squadron Alpha, you are cleared to engage, Thexar commanded. Warning shots across their bow. Show them the futility off. The transmission cut off mid-sentence. On the tactical display, 12 green dots representing the Craxian interceptors simply vanished. No explosions, no debris fields, no distress signals. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, as if they had never existed at all. The bridge fell into absolute silence. Even the ambient hum of the ship's systems seemed to quiet in the face of what they had just witnessed. What just happened? Vextor's voice carried none of its usual authority. Where are my ships? Frantic sensor sweeps found nothing. No wreckage, no energy residue, no biological matter. The interceptors had been erased from existence with such complete thoroughness that even their quantum signatures had vanished from the fleet's tracking systems. The human ship continued its approach, now close enough that visual sensors could make out details on its hull. Strange symbols were etched into the dark surface, patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. The ship's very presence felt wrong, as if it existed slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. "Admiral," the communications officer's voice cracked. "We're being scanned." But the scan, it's not technological. It's something else. Something that's looking at us. Into us. Vextor stood from his throne, his 6 legs trembling slightly. "All ships, battle formation Omega. Charge all weapons. Prepare for." He never finished the order. Every screen on every ship in the fleet suddenly displayed the same image. A pair of human eyes, impossibly deep, filled with an intelligence that seemed to see through metal and flesh alike. When the image spoke, the words bypassed their translation systems entirely, speaking directly into the minds of every Craxian in the fleet. "We sent one ship because one ship is all we need. Not to destroy you, but to show you something your empire has forgotten in its arrogance. Fear. True fear. The kind that comes not from weapons or numbers, but from facing something you cannot comprehend." The image faded, and the human ship stopped its advance, hanging motionless at the exact center of the Craxian formation. It made no threats, fired no weapons, sent no more messages. It simply waited. And in that waiting, the Craxian hegemony learned what it meant to be afraid. Reports began flooding in from across the fleet. Crew members collapsing from neural overload. Systems malfunctioning in impossible ways. The very fabric of space around them, seeming to ripple with barely contained forces they couldn't begin to understand. "Sir," Weapons Officer Krilltek's voice was barely audible. "Our targeting systems, they can't lock onto the human ship. Every time we try, the computers show us targeting our own vessels instead. It's as if space itself is being restructured around them." Vextor stared at the human vessel on the display, his mind racing. In all their conquests, they had relied on technological superiority and overwhelming numbers. But what did numbers matter against an enemy that could make ships disappear with a thought? What good was technology against something that operated beyond their understanding of physics? "Admiral," his second-in-command whispered, "what are your orders?" For the first time in his long career, Admiral Vextor of the Craxian hegemony had no answer. The human ship hung in space like a question mark made of impossibilities, challenging everything they thought they knew about power, about warfare, about the very nature of reality itself. And in that moment of silence, as 200 of the galaxy's most powerful warships found themselves paralyzed by a single vessel that defied comprehension, the true genius of humanity's gambit began to reveal itself. They hadn't sent a warship. They had sent a mirror that showed the Craxian hegemony what they truly were. A civilization that had grown so accustomed to being feared that they had forgotten what it felt like to experience fear themselves. The terror spreading through the fleet wasn't caused by weapons or threats. It was caused by the simple, devastating realization that they were no longer the apex predators they believed themselves to be. And that realization was more destructive than any weapon ever devised. The truth behind the terror. Admiral Vextor's mind reeled as he tried to process the impossible situation. The bridge of the Dominator had become a nexus of barely controlled panic, with officers reporting system failures that defied all logic. Navigation showed them simultaneously in 3 different locations. Sensors detected the human ship as being everywhere and nowhere at once. Even the ship's chronometers disagreed on what time it was. "Sir," the shaking voice of Lieutenant Hexwell broke through the chaos. "The human vessel it's sending something. Not a transmission. Something else." Before Vextor could respond, reality shifted. The bridge crew found themselves no longer on their ship but standing in what appeared to be an infinite white space. The human vessel floated before them, and beside it stood a lone human figure, wearing no environmental suit, no protective gear of any kind. The human was unremarkable in appearance. Average height, brown hair, simple gray clothing. But their eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. "Admiral Vextor," the human spoke, and though their lips moved, the words resonated directly in the Craxians' minds. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Collective. This vessel is called Perspective, and everything you've experienced in the last few minutes has been an illustration." "And illustration." Vextor's voice cracked. "You destroyed 12 of my ships." Chen shook her head, a sad smile playing on her lips. "Check your sensors, Admiral. Your ships are exactly where they were. Your crew, all 200 vessels worth, are safe and unharmed. The only thing we've destroyed is your certainty." With a gesture from Chen, reality snapped back. The bridge crew found themselves back on the Dominator, and the tactical display showed all 12 interceptors returning to formation, their pilots reporting confusion but no damage. "Impossible," Vextor breathed. "The readings, the disappearance, the fear. All real." Chen's voice came through the communication system now, ordinary audio on ordinary channels, but not caused by weapons or technology as you understand them. "Admiral, would you care to know what the Perspective actually is?" Vextor nodded, not trusting his voice. "It's a teaching vessel," Chen continued. "Humanity discovered something centuries ago, something that changed our entire approach to the cosmos. We learned that the greatest power isn't in weapons or fleets or technology. It's in understanding. The Perspective doesn't have weapons, Admiral. It has teachers. What you experienced was a lesson in humility." The bridge crew exchanged glances of disbelief. Their entire worldview, built on millennia of military dominance, was crumbling before their eyes. "But the technology," Science Officer Zekval interjected, "the readings we couldn't understand, the spatial distortions. We learned to work with consciousness itself," Chen explained, "to interface directly with the quantum substrate of reality. Your instruments couldn't read our technology because it operates on principles your civilization hasn't discovered yet. Not because you can't, but because you've been so focused on conquest that you stopped asking the deeper questions." Vextor felt his legs trembling. "Why? Why show us this?" "Because," Chen's voice carried infinite patience, "we've been watching your empire for some time. You're about to make the same mistake dozens of civilizations have made before you. You're approaching the threshold where your power exceeds your wisdom. That path leads only to self-destruction." The human ship pulsed with a gentle light, and suddenly the bridge display showed images from across the galaxy. Civilizations that had risen and fallen, empires reduced to cosmic dust, species that had annihilated themselves in the pursuit of power. "We sent one ship," Chen continued, "because we needed you to understand that force is not the ultimate arbiter of reality. We could have sent a fleet. We could have matched you gun for gun, ship for ship. But that would have taught you nothing except that there was a bigger predator in the galaxy. You would have simply built bigger weapons, recruited more ships, and the cycle would have continued. So instead," Vextor said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn, "you showed us our own vulnerability. Made us experience what our subjects feel when we arrive in their systems." "Exactly." Chen's approval was evident. "The terror you felt wasn't inflicted by us. It came from within you, from the sudden realization that your entire worldview might be wrong. That's the most powerful weapon in existence, the ability to make someone question their basic assumptions." The bridge was silent for a long moment as the implications sank in. Then, surprisingly, it was the youngest officer present who spoke up. "What do you want from us?" Ensign Televar asked, his voice steady despite his youth. "Nothing," Chen replied. "And everything. We want you to consider a different path. Your empire has the potential to be something magnificent, but not through conquest, through cooperation, through understanding, through wisdom. Vextor straightened, his military bearing reasserting itself. And if we refuse, if we continue our expansion, then you'll face the same choice every expanding empire eventually faces, Chen said sadly. You'll either learn wisdom, or you'll join the cosmic graveyard of civilizations that couldn't evolve beyond their aggressive instincts. We won't stop you. We don't need to. The universe itself has a way of dealing with species that refuse to grow. The perspective began to move away, its impossible form shimmering in the starlight. Wait, Vextor called out. How? How do we change? How do we learn what you've learned? Chen's smile was visible even through the communication channel. You've already taken the first step, Admiral. You asked the question. The perspective will remain in this system for one of your cycles. Any who wish to learn are welcome to visit. We have teachers aboard from a dozen species, including several who once walked paths similar to yours. As the human ship took up position at a respectful distance from the fleet, Vextor found himself facing the most difficult decision of his career. Everything he had been taught, everything his civilization believed in, stood on one side. On the other stood a possibility he had never considered, that there might be a form of strength greater than military might. Around him, his bridge crew watched in silence, waiting for his orders. The entire fleet waited. The future of the Craxian hegemony hung in the balance. Finally, Vextor spoke. Signal the fleet. All ships are to stand down from combat alert. And, he paused, the words feeling strange in his mouth, prepare a diplomatic shuttle. I will visit the perspective myself. The shock on his crew's faces was evident, but also in some of the younger officers, a glimmer of hope. Sir, his second-in-command asked carefully, what should I report to the Hegemony Council? Vextor looked at the human ship on the display, this vessel that had changed everything without firing a single shot. Tell them that we've made first contact with a civilization that possesses weapons we cannot comprehend. Tell them that these weapons are not pointed at our ships or our worlds, but at our minds and our assumptions. And tell them. He paused, knowing that his next words would either doom his career or transform his civilization. Tell them that we have been offered a choice between evolution and extinction, and I have chosen to at least listen to what evolution might look like. As the diplomatic shuttle prepared for launch, reports began coming in from across the fleet. Many crews wanted to join the Admiral's visit. Junior officers, scientists, even some senior commanders expressed interest in learning what the humans had to teach. The shuttle launched, carrying not just Admiral Vextor, but the first tentative hopes of a new future. As it approached the perspective, the human vessel's hull seemed to shimmer, revealing not the threatening darkness they had first seen, but something else entirely, patterns of light that looked like neural networks, like the very thoughts of the cosmos made visible. Inside the shuttle, Vextor reflected on the events of the day. His empire had sent 200 warships to conquer a primitive species. Instead, one ship had conquered their preconceptions, their certainties, their very understanding of reality. And the most terrifying thing of all, the humans hadn't conquered them through force. They had simply held up a mirror and asked the Craxian hegemony to take a good, hard look at themselves. As the shuttle docked with the perspective, Admiral Vextor prepared to step into a larger universe than he had ever imagined. Behind him, 200 warships waited in silence, their crews beginning to understand that the greatest victories were not always won with weapons. Sometimes they were won with wisdom.